You get a behavioral interview question like, tell me about a time you handled a difficult project. You give a perfectly organized star answer. The situation is clear. The task is clear. You explain your actions and finish with a positive result. But the interviewer still looks unconvinced. The problem may not be your experience. Your answer may sound like a memorized success story instead of evidence of how you actually work. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. It is a useful structure for answering questions about past behavior. But STAR only organizes a story. It does not automatically make the story specific, relevant, or believable. A weak STAR answer often sounds like this. Our team had an important project with a tight deadline. My task was to make sure we delivered it successfully. I communicated with everyone, prioritized the work, and solved several problems. As a result, we completed the project on time and the client was very happy. Nothing in that answer is necessarily wrong. It is also almost impossible to evaluate. What was the project? Why was the deadline difficult? What problems appeared? What did the candidate personally do? Did communicated with everyone mean sending 2 emails or leading a difficult negotiation? What evidence shows that the client was happy? The answer has the shape of proof without providing much proof. That matters because a behavioral interview is not just a storytelling contest. The interviewer is trying to assess a job-related competency through your past behavior. If the role requires judgment, collaboration, ownership, or adaptability, the interviewer needs enough detail to see that behavior in action. Think of STAR as 4 empty containers. You still have to put useful evidence inside them. The first upgrade is to add stakes. Stakes explain why the situation mattered. Without them, every project sounds routine. You do not need to make the story dramatic. You simply need to explain what could have been lost, delayed, damaged, or missed. Instead of saying, we had an important project, say, we were preparing a product demo for a prospective client, and a successful demo would determine whether we moved into the final sales round. Now the interviewer understands why the work required attention. Stakes can involve money, time, customer trust, safety, team capacity, compliance, or a commitment made to another department. If you are early in your career, the stakes can be smaller. Maybe a student organization risked losing a venue. Maybe a volunteer event did not have enough people. Maybe your class project depended on receiving data from another team. Credibility does not come from making the stakes enormous. It comes from making them clear. The second upgrade is to add constraints. A constraint is what prevented the obvious solution from being easy. You had limited time, incomplete information, a small budget, conflicting priorities, unavailable staff, technical limitations, or a stakeholder who disagreed with the plan. Compare these 2 lines. Weak wording sounds like, I created a new reporting process to improve efficiency. A stronger version sounds like, I needed to reduce the time spent on weekly reporting, but I could not purchase new software or change the system used by our finance team. That second version creates a real problem. It also gives the interviewer a fair way to judge the solution. If practical interview guidance like this is useful, subscribe. This channel is focused on helping qualified candidates explain their value clearly, especially when their experience is stronger than their interview performance suggests. Now we get to the part most STAR answers miss, the decision. Candidates often describe activity instead of judgment. They say they scheduled meetings, gathered information, communicated with stakeholders, and tracked progress. Those actions may be useful, but they do not show why the candidate chose them. A decision reveals how you think. For example, I spoke with the customer is an action. I decided to show the customer a reduced version of the demo rather than risk presenting an unstable feature is a decision. The second sentence creates useful follow-up questions. Why was the feature unstable? Why was reducing the scope better than delaying? Who needed to approve that choice? Those questions are not a sign that your answer failed. They are often a sign that the interviewer has found something worth exploring. Do not memorize every word of your answer to prevent follow-up questions. Prepare enough detail to handle them. The fourth upgrade is to include a trade-off. Real work rarely offers a perfect option. You often protect one priority by giving up something else. You choose speed over completeness, simplicity over customization, or a short-term workaround over a longer implementation. A trade-off makes your story sound more believable because it shows that your solution had a cost. You might say, automating the full report would have taken several weeks, so I built a standardized template first. It did not remove every manual step, but it reduced duplicate work without disrupting the monthly close. Notice the difference. The candidate is not pretending to have transformed the entire company. They identified the limit of the solution and explained why it was still the right move. Let's rewrite the generic project answer from the beginning. Here is the weak version again. Our team had an important project with a tight deadline. My task was to make sure we delivered it successfully. I communicated with everyone, prioritized the work, and solved several problems. As a result, we completed the project on time, and the client was very happy. Here is a more credible version. 2 weeks before a product demo for a prospective client, our engineer discovered that one of the features promised for the demonstration was failing when we used the client's sample data. I was coordinating the demo, and my responsibility was to give the sales team a reliable presentation without hiding the technical risk. We had 2 realistic options. We could keep troubleshooting the full feature and risk having nothing stable on the day, or reduce the scope and demonstrate the part we knew would work. I asked the engineer to estimate what could be tested reliably within 3 days. I then met with the sales lead and recommended the reduced version. The trade-off was that the demo would be less impressive, but we could explain the remaining feature honestly and provide a follow-up date. I rewrote the demo flow around the stable functions, created a backup recording, and gave the sales lead a short explanation of the limitation in case the client asked. The live demo worked, the client moved us into the next evaluation round, and our engineer delivered the remaining test results the following week. Afterward, we added a technical review before future demo commitments. This answer is stronger even though the candidate does not look flawless. A feature failed. The original plan had to change. The final demo included less than the team wanted. Those imperfections make the candidate's judgment visible. The story also separates personal contribution from team contribution. The engineer estimated the technical work. The sales lead handled the customer relationship. The candidate assessed the options, made a recommendation, reorganized the demo, and created a backup. That distinction is important. Interviewers know that meaningful work usually involves other people. Constantly saying "I" can sound as misleading as constantly saying "we." Use "we" for the shared objective and "I" for your own decisions and actions. The result also goes beyond "the client was happy." It provides observable changes. The demo worked, the client advanced the company to another round, the delayed test was completed, and the team changed its process. Not every result needs a percentage or revenue figure. If you have a reliable number, use it. If you do not invent one. You can describe an observable outcome, such as approval received, errors reduced, a deadline met, a complaint resolved, a process adopted, or a risk avoided. Be careful with another common mistake. Some candidates add so much background that the action disappears. You do not need to explain the company's history, every person involved, or every stage of a 6-month project. Give the interviewer only enough context to understand the stakes and constraints. Then spend most of the answer on what you noticed, decided, said, changed, or built. You also do not need to force every answer into a polished victory. A good story can include a mistake, a mixed result, or a lesson, especially when the question asks about failure, conflict, or feedback. Suppose you are asked about a disagreement. A fake-sounding answer might end with, "After I explained my perspective, my colleague agreed with me, and the project was successful." A more credible ending could be, "We did not fully agree, so we tested both options with a small group of users. Their feedback supported part of my colleague's approach, and I changed the rollout plan. We still met the deadline, and I learned to test the disagreement earlier instead of continuing an abstract debate." You did not win the argument. You helped the team make a better decision. That may be stronger evidence of collaboration. When you prepare your interview stories, do not write complete scripts and memorize them. Create a compact story map. Know the opening situation, the stakes, the main constraint, the decision, the trade-off, and the result. Practice telling the same story in slightly different words so it stays structured without sounding recited. Before using any STAR story, ask 4 proof questions. What made this situation genuinely difficult? What did I personally decide or do? What trade-off or constraint shaped my choice? What changed, and how do I know? If your answer cannot address those questions, it probably needs more detail or a better example. STAR is not supposed to turn your experience into a perfect corporate success story. It is supposed to help an interviewer follow the evidence. Keep the structure, remove the generic claims, and show the real decision inside the work. If you have an interview question you struggle to answer, put it in the comments. You can also suggest the next job search topic you want this channel to break down.